I feel like you're taking the Kale side of things and I'm taking the Rowan interpretation of this color, okay?
And if that is not the essence of this podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Book and Fantasy Podcast. We, Addison and Lorraine, are two best friends who explore the world of fantasy through books, shows, and movies, but with a heavy emphasis on books. Today, we are discussing the Untitled deleted scene from Heir of Fire. This was just such a cute scene, and I'm so sad that it wasn't in the book because I loved it. I ate all of that cute romantic shit up. I loved it. I want more of it. And you guys know that I'm a romantic. And so any kind of romance that we get in these books, I'm like an addict. I'm a fiend, okay?
Meanwhile, I was throwing up just like Rowan was, okay?
No, don't say that.
I know, no, I wasn't. I'm being a little dramatic. It was nice to see a change in their interaction. It wasn't all like, I hate you. Let's beat each other up. Let me see something really mean. It was nice to see something a little different, but, eye roll. Big eye roll, okay?
I just thought it was especially cute because we don't get too many scenes between Selena and Rowan where they can just be hanging out, because honestly,
yes,
the entire time she's either training or then they had to go defeat the Valg and whatever else is going on. It was just nice to see a playful and relaxed side of the relationship. But that being said, it is very obvious why this was not in Heir of Fire.
Absolutely. Yes. And my favorite section of the episode, in my overarching thoughts, I have some feedback to offer on that specifically.
Ooh, okay. Well, let's not delay too much longer then. So, as a quick reminder, we will be discussing the scene as it relates to Heir of Fire, but we will be making references to things from other books we've covered so far as well, which includes TOG, Com, and Tab, as well as Heir of Fire in its entirety. If you haven't finished these books, please pause here and make sure you're caught up before you start to listen. Otherwise, you're definitely going to get some spoilers. So,
yes.
Also, the rest of the series is brand new to us, so you don't need to worry about spoilers for Queen of Shadows or the rest of the books, but anything before that, watch out. Furthermore, we would like to remind everyone that this is an adult podcast where we will have explicit conversations. Explicit language or potentially triggering topics may be discussed, so please be mindful of that and adjust accordingly. Housekeeping. We have officially finished Heir of Fire now, and we will be moving into Queen of Shadows next. If you are reading along with us, then we will be covering chapters 1 through 7. Next, if you haven't listened to it yet, we did just release a bonus episode covering the recently released excerpt from Onyx Storm. If you are a Fourth Wing fan, then definitely go check that out. We have officially decided that we will be covering Onyx Storm because Addison and I are very big fans of that series as well. But if you want more details on how and when we will be covering that when it comes out on January 21st, then please go refer to the bonus episode. Finally, if you are enjoying the show, then the very best way for you to support us is to rate our podcast, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We have been getting a lot of really lovely reviews and texts from you guys, and we have absolutely loved reading them. It really just brightens our day, and we get so excited every time we get some feedback. But in case you sent us a text and you're wondering why we didn't respond, just to make it very clear, we can't actually respond to the text messages. We can only see them. So if you do want to open up a little convo with us, you can either email us or DM us on Instagram or TikTok, and we will happily have a little chit chat. We can yap all about everything. Okay. So
specifically, if you agree with something I said, then we would love to talk.
Addison is an ardent Kale defender, and she needs some validation.
To the day I die. And just a fair warning, when we get to Onyx Storm, I am a Dane defender through and through. So if that triggers you, we should talk. I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise. If you've listened to our TOG coverage, I think you can kind of tell that Chaol and Dane are similar-ish characters, right? And their storylines follow a similar path, I would say. So it shouldn't come as that much of a shock.
Yeah. To continue, we do have a humble request to make before we get into the episode. If you have not already done so, then we would be ever so grateful if you do leave us a review on whatever app you listen on. Spotify, I believe, only lets you leave a star rating, but if you are an Apple Podcast listener, then you can write a personalized review there, and then we will feature it on our Instagram. Yay!
And more importantly, it will be featured in our hearts.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
I cannot tell you, I take a screenshot of them, I send them to Lorraine, I send them to my husband, I send them to everybody. So featured on our public story and featured in my personal heart space that I saved us for you guys.
Number one in our hearts.
For real, though.
But yeah, in all seriousness, we do really love getting feedback from you all. And the reviews really help us on the platform so we can continue to grow our book club audience. So that is all for housekeeping. And let's get into the episode. We will start with a quick book report to summarize the scene, and then we will dive into an analysis and offer theories, and finally, we will share our favorite moments as well. With that being said, Addison, please give us the book report.
Happily. Rowan and Celaena receive an unwanted visit from 3 members of Maeve's court. Rowan, not wanting to deal with the preening nobility alone, asks for Celaena's help in entertaining the guests, and Celaena reluctantly agrees as long as she can bank a favor from Rowan for later. The guests arrive, and man, do they suck. Well, except for SR. It becomes immediately obvious there was some romantic history between Ramel and Rowan, and Celaena does not like it. Ramel makes her disdain for Celaena known immediately, and it becomes even more obvious when she catches Rowan and Celaena in what looks to be a compromising position. But to Lorraine's disappointment, it wasn't. I knew when I read that, I was like, Lorraine was like, yes, kiss, 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 and then nothing. Freaking Ramel had to ruin it for Lorraine.
Get out, Ramel.
Later that day, Celaena was helping prepare dinner and SR comes to help. The two have a slightly awkward but mostly pleasant conversation. It is not until dinner that things really heat up. Get it? When Ramel insults Emerson, then Rowan, Celaena sets the room ablaze. She tells Benson to keep his eyes and his hands to himself, and if Ramel steps one toe out of line, she will be ash on the wind. Later that evening, Rowan and Celaena share a heartfelt moment, and Lorraine gushes and swoons, but Addison is still not impressed. The next day, as the party departs, SR says some lovely and kind but also cryptic things to Rowan about Celaena and promises she will stay silent about what she has seen in Mistward. Later on, as Rowan reads the report, Celaena giddily brings him a misshapen and lumpy brown food, which he quickly guesses is chocolate hazelnut cake. To Celaena's delight, Rowan eats almost the entire cake. And it is not until Rowan leaves the room that Celaena tries her own baking, and Rowan hears her cursing and coughing and spitting that he opens the bathing room door and quickly casts up the contents of his stomach.
That was so funny. I love that. And it's so on brand for her because we know girl loves to eat. She loves her chocolates. She loves her chocolate cake, etc. But I'm not surprised that she did not bake it well.
No. Honestly, when she said she baked it, I'm like, you made that? For real? It's just
Are you sure?
Right? It's just so funny because she is so accomplished in so many ways. She is such a badass and can do so many things. But she does not have a domestic bone in her body. Like, not even a little bit. But then that almost makes it sweeter, right? That she went through that effort to make it for him. So it was pretty cute.
She tried so hard. I know. Next time. Better luck next time. All right. Well, thank you for that summary. And now let's get into our analysis. And per usual, we have overarching thoughts. So go ahead, Addison.
We sure do. First thing we want to quickly note is we will link this Untitled scene in the episode description. To be honest, I did a little bit of research and I'm not sure of the actual origins of this Untitled scene. I know some of the later Untitled scenes were released in the Barnes & Noble edition of the book or the Target edition. But this one, I'm not actually sure. I do know the other bonus episodes we covered that are around the TOG timeline were actually released on blogs. So I'm wondering if this one was too, but I actually was not able to find out. So if anyone actually knows the origin of it, that would be really cool, just out of curiosity to know. But we will put the link for the actual short scene if you have not read it yet. Next, I want to explain why we decided to cover this bonus scene at the end of our Heir of Fire coverage, even though chronologically it falls in the middle of the book. In our research, it was recommended that you read this after completing Heir of Fire because it can change the way you experience a narrative and, most importantly, affect how you experience Rowan and Celaena's developing relationship. To be honest, I completely agree. Having completed Heir of Fire, I feel for many reasons that this would have altered the experience in a way that I don't think would have done justice to the body of work. So that leads me to also, to me, I think this was left out of the book for a reason by SGM and her editing team. And we both feel very strongly we should try to honor the story the way the author has intended for it to be told, right? Because they are the ones with the creative vision for the character's journey. So I think the fact that this was omitted is indicative of that. So of course, we're happy to read it now because we've experienced Heir of Fire the way it was meant to be told. So I'm not sad about it. I'm not complaining about bonus content. I always want it. But especially with this scene in particular, there's some tonal shifts and stuff that we'll talk about that are kind of stand out to us. I feel that we made the right choice and we hope you feel the same. Next, in terms of actual timeline, you might be wondering where this fits chronologically in Heir of Fire. Timeline-wise, it falls within the events of chapter 45, which is right after Celaena's burnout at Beltane. She and Rowan have that scene where he's throwing ice daggers at her to get her to master turning her fire into a shield. And after that, she gets internally motivated and starts practicing on her own. Those are the preceding events. And then if you actually go back to read chapter 45, there is a line that says this. They'd spent the past week fighting and defending and manipulating her magic, interrupted only by a rather miserable visit from some Fae nobility traveling through the area, which left Celaena in no hurry to set foot in Doranelle. Thankfully, the guests stayed for one night, hardly disrupting her lessons. And now we know who those guests were and why the visit was miserable. And let me just say, Ramel, she is no cakewalk. I see why she makes everyone miserable.
I know. I was not a fan of her, but I did like Esser. And that line was so tiny. He totally skipped over that.
Oh my gosh, I know.
It does make a lot of sense, just also thinking about how Celaena's power has progressed and like her ability to master it. And then also there was like a huge shift in her and Rowan's relationship after Beltane. And then he took care of her for several days while she recovered. And so it makes a lot of sense that this scene, even if it ultimately didn't end up in the book, I felt like it fit in pretty well at that point in the story. So
I agree. So that leads me to, speaking of, I do have to wonder why this scene was omitted from the book. I think there could be several reasons, but here is what I think is most likely. As we discussed earlier, we both did enjoy the change of pace between Rowan and Celaena. They were obviously more playful and physical, but to me, this scene just doesn't fit the trajectory of their relationship and the story so far. And it's actually a little jarring to see them so friendly and playful and, more importantly, physical at this point in the story. I really don't think it matches up with how we move through the second part of the book. So I can see why they omitted it, but also why they wanted readers to have access to it, because it does provide some nice relief and some color for that they're more friendly to each other. So I think their relationship was probably pretty difficult for her to write, because you want the balance of enemies to maybe lovers, but enemies to friends to maybe something more. But I imagine this was a bit of a beast for her to write. And so she wrote this and then she was like, it just doesn't fit. But I am glad we get to read it now.
Yes, I totally agree. The scene felt much more romantic than your impression is as you're actually reading the story. Obviously, by the end of it, you can see they are definitely good friends now and good like partners from the point of view of how they work together. But we haven't quite crossed the line of fully into a romantic situation between the two of them. And we don't know if that even will happen. We just have to keep reading to get that confirmation. But I actually felt like the writing itself didn't feel like SJM's writing. The very first sentence, I was like, who wrote this? I thought it was fan fiction at first, honestly, because she was talking about how she like threw up
Chucked
a
a
nut
nut.
and like
It was
chucked
chucked
a
a
nut and
nut.
then popped it in her mouth or whatever. And then she's lounging like a lizard in the sun. And it was funny, but I was like, yeah, tonally different from the rest of the writing in the book.
Yeah.
There were just like word choices and sentence structures that didn't quite feel like SJM to me. For example, also Rowan's cadre was referred to as a cabal or a cabal.
Oh,
How do you say that?
yeah. Cabal, I think.
Cabal. Okay, yeah. And that seems off to me because every instance of Rowan's Fey warrior group was always referred to as a cadre in Hoth.
Yeah. I think Rowan even says to her, my cadre, as you call it, right? It's distinct enough that even Rowan is like, that's what you call it. So that's interesting.
I guess all that being said, you can tell that it tonally and content wise feels different from the rest of Heir of Fire. So in that sense, it makes sense why it was deleted.
Yeah.
I still enjoyed it a lot.
I knew you would. As soon as I started reading it, I said, oh God, here we go.
Okay, so that concludes all of our overarching thoughts. And now we can get into the actual analysis. I would like to say that the beginning of the sequence of banter was just super cute and hilarious because, again, we don't get that playful, casual side of Rowan either in Heir of Fire. Selena. So she kind of always has that joking flair, a little bit of a impish side to her, I guess. But with Rowan's always so uptight and very kind of like get to work kind of.
So uptight. The most uptight. God, as you said that, I'm trying to think of any other SJM character specifically that is more uptight than Rowan. And I cannot think of anyone in this second. Like
Kael. I feel like Kael's kind of a little
How dare you? No way.
Yes,
no.
He is.
Don't get me started on that. Quit it.
Chastising Selena in the same way. There are some similarities in their personalities, I will say, between the two of them.
That's fair. Okay, that's a conversation for a different day. That's fair. But I'm still going to say Rowan's more uptight. I'm just going to say.
No, yeah, I think so too. I feel like that's also partly because he's Fae. I feel like a lot of personality traits for Fae, or like behaviors even, are more exaggerated.
Yes.
Than they are for like the human equivalent of that character trait. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, as we talked a little bit about before, most of Heir of Fire, the relationship between Aelin and Rowan was focused on training in the Valg and Narok's forces. So there wasn't a lot of time for them to just hang out and relax because shit was getting real very quickly. But one of the first lines that I really enjoyed and made me laugh was when Rowan says there's a street vendor in Doranelle who sells meat on a stick. And Selena's response was, meat on a stick, as she fights to keep a straight face. And it's so, that's what she said, coded.
I know.
I thought it was hilarious.
I was trying to be mature when I was reading this, but I'm like, this is so juvenile. This whole interaction. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking it. Like, I thought it was hilarious, but I was just like, where is freaking Steve Carell from The Office? That's what she said. Like I was freaking waiting.
Or Addison from a couple episodes ago.
I know.
You like to say that.
I haven't done a That's What She Said joke in a while, and it came to me and I just had to do it,
It's funny though. So Rowan makes fun of her about her love of sweets, and Selena responds, I'd crawl over hot coals for a piece of chocolate hazelnut cake right now, which causes her to think about Kael. And I did feel like that line was both a tribute to Selena's continued love of chocolate cake, which has remained a consistent part of her personality. But it was also sad, of course, because we know the end of her relationship with Kael was not a clean-cut situation, and they had spent many nights eating chocolate cake together in calm. And most notably, I remember a scene where they were sitting together in Kael's room the night after their night of waltzing together at the ball in calm with the whole, they were just for this one night, they were a girl and a boy. Nothing else mattered, but the night after that, they were chilling in Kale's room and he had started to make fun of her after she asked for some cake. And he was like, and an apple tart and a loaf of bread and a pot of stew and a mound of cookies. And then she like kicks him, with her foot in the face and just like pushes him away. But
I remember that scene because it was just so cute. It was like them just being a normal
know.
couple. So after they discussed the chocolate cake, she then asked Rowan what his favorite color is, and he says green, and then he asks her what hers is. And she says, for a while, I made myself believe it was blue, but it's always been red. You probably know why. That stood out to me, honestly, because I thought it was just a little weird. I'm not sure I understand what she means by that, just to be totally frank. My best guess is that blood is red. And since she's a lethal killing machine, she's seen a lot of blood. And I mean, a lot of the language is like she's ready for the bloodletting. She's ready for the violence, right? I was just really confused with that, to be honest. Maybe it's really obvious, but to me, I was like, what? What does this mean? So if anybody knows why her favorite color is red, that it doesn't have to do with blood, let me know.
Wait, I think that's funny that your first thought was her killing people and blood because my first thought was fire.
Oh. But I mean, is fire really red though? I mean,
reddish,
Plus, she was scared of her firepower for a long time, but she wasn't scared of killing people. I don't know. It's weird.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. I feel like you're taking the Kale side of things and I'm taking the Rowan interpretation of this color, okay?
And if that is not the essence of this podcast.
You Kale defender. Just kidding.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting.
Send us a text. What do you think she meant by that? So after that, they continue talking and Selena begins to actually play with her fire. And it's noted that she crafts a line of fire through her fingers. She plaited it between her knuckles and then snaked it down her palm until it curled around her wrist, twining and slithering along her skin. And after Rowan compliments her, she forges a non-burning crown of flame over his head. I thought this was an interesting note because this continues to demonstrate the mastery that Selena has developed with her flame. And as we saw with her encounter in Doranelle with Maeve at the end of Heir of Fire, when she sends the flames up and engulfs the city in flame, but she doesn't actually burn anything because it's not hot fire. So I thought this was an interesting little note about what she can do with her fire now.
Yeah. Well, and even more so, I mean, she does it again in this scene in the dinner scene with Rommel. I kind of thought that was like foreshadowing and a precursor for her ability to light a room on fire without burning. And so that's funny that you say that because I thought the same thing later on in the scene.
I also really liked when Rowan tells her, I trust you. And Selena notes, he looked kingly indeed, a warrior king, as brutal as the lines of his tattoo. And I know that this is not part of the series officially, but Rowan looking kingly is very interesting to me.
Okay, here we go. So honestly, that actually stood out to me too. I wondered if it was a hint or allusion or foreshadowing that he might be a king someday, maybe king of the Fae. He is a prince after all. Or if we're going with your mate theory, then hypothetically, he could be Aelin's king. Okay, and then put that out there as a possibility. But also, I would like to point out this was left out of the canonical body of work for a reason. So that sort of discredits the king theory. But that did also stick out to me, especially because in the next part, he makes her a crown. And we know, obviously, the symbolism of that. So it is kind of interesting.
Yeah. So speaking of the next scene, Rowan does make her a crown of ice in return. But this only serves to remind Selena of her past, unfortunately, which of course is sad because at this point in time, she still had not reconciled everything about her past and her role as Terrason's heir. That shift really didn't occur until the Valg encounter, basically, right? So she was working with her power by this point, but she was still working on her own internal dialogue about her past and who she is and who she wants to be moving forward. The conversation switches to a discussion of Fey nobility passing through the area, whom Rowan would be expected to entertain and requests Selena's help with. This line is what clues us into knowing the scene takes place in chapter 45 of Heir of Fire. I also think it's hilarious that Selena tries to bargain and Rowan promises her a chocolate hazelnut cake, but Selena asks for a favor to call in whenever she pleased instead. At the time, I did wonder what the favor is. Well, I guess the cake later on, she calls in her favor, but do you think that's what the real favor
No,
was?
absolutely
Okay,
not.
okay.
No, he says consider us even, but I'm like, no, that is not equitable. Absolutely not. So I thought maybe she was going to ask for a little physical distraction from Kale.
Oh,
No,
whoa. I'm
no, I'm
surprised.
just
Oh,
kidding. I
okay.
didn't
I
really
was going to
believe
be
that.
like, I'm very surprised that you said that. That seems very out of character for you.
I just said that just for your benefit, purely your benefit.
Oh, thank you
Well,
so much.
I mean, I will say she does think about how hot he is several times. It's always like that deep, innate feminine part of her couldn't help but notice
Mhm.
his muscled arms. Like, girl, you're thirsty. Okay.
Well, actually,
But
that
okay.
does tie in also to this time frame because during the Beltane festival, she was making all those comments about how these other Fae were looking at Rowan and she didn't like it. And she's
Mhm.
like, maybe I've been spending too much time in my Fae form and now I'm all territorial. And I'm like, yeah, you
Maybe.
are, aren't you?
Mhm. Yes. But I did actually, for real, wonder if at some point this will come up later in the series. Maybe there will be what seems like a throwaway line where she says something like, Rowan, I'm calling in that favor you owe me, or something to that effect. Like, it wouldn't be out of place in the text if you hadn't read this, but if you had, you might be like, that's the favor she's finally calling in. So I do wonder if there will be some kind of throwaway line like that or something in another book and one of their interactions.
Ooh, that would be a really fun little Easter egg.
Right? I know, I
If
thought so
SJM
too.
did that. Okay. So the first part of the scene ends, and it's time to meet the Fey nobility. First off, the Fey arrive on Asterian horses. This was a really cute callback to the Assassin in the Desert story in Tab, where Ansel and Selena stole Assyrian horses. Selena had named hers Casita, and then unfortunately she had to sell it to pay off Sam's debt, which is really sad. But aside from that callback, I did think it was really cool that these horses are highly prized in other parts of the world. I had previously just thought they were specific to the Red Desert area, but it seems like they have them in Wenderland.
Yeah, I wasn't actually that surprised to see Asterian horses because if you recall, when we're first introduced to them, there's a quote, I think it's in Tab, it might have been in Com. I did find the quote, I just can't remember where it was, but it says, the tale of the creation of the Asterian horses purports that the Fae made them from the four winds, spirit from the north, strength of the south, speed from the east, and wisdom from the west. Asterians are believed to be the most ancient breed of horse in Aurelia. So it wouldn't
Oh,
surprise
that's
me if a lot
right.
of Fae actually have them. Not to mention they're probably the best kind of horse and they're very expensive. And it seems like all Fae people are rich. Like in every fantasy book, show me a poor Fae person, okay? For real, for real.
Right, right. That's so,
But it
so true. That was a
it
good callback.
is.
I had forgotten that detail. So thank you.
Yeah, when she said Asterian horse, I don't know, it just jogged the thought, and then I went down a little rabbit hole about Asterian horses. But it also did make me wonder, what the fuck is Leifer Bardingale up to? Since day one, since we met Casita and then she had to give her up back in Tab, I was like, we better get Casita back. Selena better find a way. And honestly, I would love to see her exact some revenge on Leifer for her betrayal. I don't know if I know I want her to kill her, but I would love some kind of something, retribution. I don't know. But I really do want her to get Casita back. I hope that we
Yeah.
see that in the series.
Oh, yeah. I hope she does too. She deserves to get her horse back.
Yeah,
Take her from Leifer. Leifer doesn't deserve that horse
that's right.
for her treachery. Okay, so to continue in the scene, there are five Fae in the group, one of whom is a beautiful female Fae with pale blonde hair and vibrant cerulean eyes, which fix and delight on Rowan. This female's name is Lady Ramel, and I find it hilarious that Selena thinks, Gods, the idea of Rowan kissing anyone's hand, because we know that by the time the Beltane Festival had occurred, Selena had grown to become territorial over Rowan. especially in her Fae form. And then after this, we are also introduced to Lady Esser and Lord Benson as well. But Selena is very fixated on Ramel, thinking, lovers? She didn't know why she thought that losing his mate meant he'd been celibate. But someone like Ramel? Ooh, she was definitely jealous, and I love it. It's so funny just to see her act this way. It reminds me of how she reacted toward Lysandra in Tab with Sam.
Oh,
You know?
absolutely. Yeah. Get that girl some peanut butter because she is jelly. Okay. She is jelly as hell. Do you like my lame mom joke?
Yeah.
I'm feeling real lame today. I don't know why. I'm really going for like the mom and dad jokes.
No, I like it. Moms aren't lame. I like the mom energy though. It's very funny.
Thank you.
So Rowan introduces her to the Fae as Alentia. And I love that he noticeably stiffens when Lord Benson gives Selena a look over. He did not like that.
In fairness, he probably also knows that Lord Benson is creepy as hell. So,
True.
Like a little bit, it's a jealousy, but it's also probably because Benson is just a creep. So he's probably like, don't even think about it, which I mean, he basically says later. So after meeting these characters, it prompted a thought for me. I speculate that the characters we're meeting here, much like our analysis in Tab, I think there's a good chance we end up meeting all three of these characters again. If not all of them, then definitely SR, because she seems the most normal and kind, and she also seems to have the biggest connection to Rowan and also Lorcan, who we speculate is going to become a much larger character because he's being mentioned more, and especially at the end when she says, give Lorcan my regards, right? And so I definitely get the sense that she's a good person, and also that kind of cryptic conversation she has with Rowan at the end where she's complimenting Selena and that he deserves her and everything. It just gave me the sense that we will meet these characters again. On the one hand, if this was in the book, I'd be like, absolutely. But since it's deleted, it does give me pause, but it would not shock me if we meet all three of these characters, or for sure, at least SR.
Well, in this story, even, they are working for Maeve, running spy quests for her and all that stuff. So I could see us meeting them at some point. Maybe not for very long, or they may not be super prominent in the book, but maybe like in passing or for a brief situation.
Just like casually mentioned. Yeah. Or like they go to some Fae dinner and she sees Lady Ramel and she thinks about the last time they met or something kind of quick and throwaway like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. So after the Fae arrive, they go and take a bath and get ready for dinner. And Selena grills Rowan about his past with Ramel, which I thought was funny. And Rowan does admit to having a relationship with Ramel, but he claims it was a mistake to hook up with her. And Selena goads him and barely contains her laugh as she says, sounds like you made that mistake a few times. And then
dang, she really called him out for real.
I think it's funny though. Yeah, call him out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But then Rowan gets right up in her face to growl, don't you dare, leaning low enough that his breath warmed her mouth. And all I could think was, kiss, kiss, kiss.
What a shocker.
Very upset that they got interrupted by Ramel. Okay. I'm also very upset, obviously, that this wasn't an actual scene in the book because, as I've stated earlier, and I will continue to say, I'm dying for a little bit of romance. Also, this would really help bolster my mate theory if it was a real scene, but
if it was, if only.
No dice. No dice today.
Which, okay, but this may make you feel a little better. To me, that begs the question, was it taken out because it is too heavy-handed that they're going to end up together? Or because they don't, and this makes it confusing. You could interpret it either way, right? So
yeah, we'll see. Per usual, we just have to keep reading.
I think we need, the just keep swimming, be like, just keep reading, just keep reading, just keep reading. Because that is the mantra of this podcast. Just keep reading.
Basically. Selena dismisses herself to go help Everest, leaving Rowan and Ramel to talk. I was disappointed that Rowan makes up an excuse for why they are sharing a room. But I suppose keeping as much information as possible away from Maeve is a pretty good reason. But after he tells Ramal this, he thinks not quite alive, but not the entire truth. And I was like, what does that mean, Rowan? What are you implying in this deleted scene?
All I'm going to say here is that remember how he told her she could have the bed for one night and then she was going to get a cot and then they never got the cot? Yeah. So I don't think her presence was entirely unwanted, okay? I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. But then, okay, this is my favorite part, is the touch her and die energy Rowan gives off at the suggestion that Benson would take Selena to bed. It is, as you like to say, chef's kiss. I love protective Rowan. And his specific thought was, if Benson lays one finger on her, he's going to find himself without his insides. Benson looks twice at her and he dies. And it's very clear that in this scene, Rowan cares for her much more by this point. And it does remind me of the response he makes in chapter 43 of Heir of Fire when Selena asks him to introduce her to his cadre. And then his line was, "The thought of you with any of my companions makes my blood run cold."
Oh, see, I always thought that was because his companions are vicious.
It could be.
Or maybe because Selena's so vicious and he's afraid she'll burn them alive. I mean, either way, right? But you're right. Now it does seem a little more like out of jealousy.
Right. But again, that does add to the idea that this bonus scene probably will make you rethink and recontextualizes some of their interactions and things that they've said to each other. So,
oh, totally.
You know. Right after this, Rowan thinks about Lorcan, and we finally get a tiny bit of info about his commander. So it turns out that Lorcan is a demi-fae, but the fact that he had proven himself to A, get into Doranelle in the first place, and B, actually become the commander of Rowan's cadre does imply that Rocan. Why did I say Rocan?
Rocan. That's their couple's names, Rocan.
Rocan's on the loose. Okay.
I mean, they are kind of a dynamic duo.
Yes, as they say later on. So that can be their scary dynamic duo name.
Yes. When they level cities, here comes Rocan, you know?
Yes. But it did imply to me that Lorcan is a highly skilled, or we don't know how much power he has, but if he's in Maeve's little cadre, it must mean that he's got some, aside from just general combat and apparent ruthlessness. So,
excuse me, it's actually Cabal now. That cadre is so Heir of Fire, okay?
The Cabal.
The Cabal. But no, in all seriousness, this actually really piqued my interest about Lorcan for kind of that reason. He's getting mentioned more and more and his relationship with Rowan. And to me, especially given that we know most demi-fae possess little to no magic, and it said he proved himself more than a millennium ago. So that to me means two things. Number one, he's been around for a long, long time. And two, he has got to be extremely powerful because he's only a demi-fae, right? So he has some dilution of blood, right? So his power has got to be really extreme. So I am really interested to know what his powers are and how he got tangled up with Maeve. And not only that, but we know from Heir of Fire, he's the highest ranking male in Doranelle. I have a lot of questions about Lorcan that I would like some background on.
That does bring to mind, Aelin herself is a demi-fae.
True.
And she's very strong, likely because of Mala's blessing to her, I guess.
But I always get confused by that because I know technically she is mortal, but when she is a fae, she's a full-blooded fae. That always gets a little weird to me. I don't know. I can't do that today. I can't have this discussion today.
No, I agree. It's confusing to call her a demi-fae when she's so freaking strong. So, yeah, agreed. This is not a combo for today.
Not today.
It requires too much brain power.
In addition to that little information about Lorcan, we also get some world building information here that most of the demi-fae in Doranelle end up in sex work. It's unclear whether they are physically forced or circumstantially forced. Like they finally get there, but they aren't really accepted and don't have many options. So they're forced into that. But either way, this is absolutely heartbreaking and something I just know if Selena gets wind of, she will absolutely rectify. Very similar to how she's like gonna burn down Cuculla and Dovier and destroy the vault for how the horrible positions it puts people in. I'm like, ooh, you better not tell Selena that because she'll burn Doranelle to the ground. You better look out. I also thought it was interesting too. It seems pretty clear that Rowan didn't seem to know that. He seems sort of shocked by that when Ramel says that. And he even wonders if Lorcan has any idea that's what's going on. And so regardless, just another reason to hate Maeve.
Batty bad Maeve. So in the kitchen later on, Selena helps prepare dinner and she ends up talking with Esser. Esser tells Selena that Maeve gave us a task, which I'm not supposed to talk about, but yes, it involved us traveling for a bit. We're on our way back to Doranelle, though. Thank the bright lady. And then Esser reveals that she is a fire wielder, though she is pretty weak, all considering. And this also prompts Selena to conclude she was gifted with Mala's fire. And my question is Esser a descendant of Mala or Brandon as well? Or just in general, how did she end up with the magic of fire wielding? And of course, I'm also curious about the inheritability of magic and how it's passed on to other generations, you know?
Yeah, I think those are all great questions. Based on where we are in the story, my answer would be yes, she has to be some descendant of Mala. Now, of course, we're talking generations and generations and generations. So she could have, just a tiny drop of Mala's power, and that's why she's able to have it. We do know that fire wielders are extremely rare. So to me, it seems highly likely that she is a descendant of Mala. And then there's also kind of the added element of just who your parents are, how much magic they had in their blood and all that. But it does make me wonder if she is a descendant of Brandon via Mala, etc. It would not surprise me to hear that.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, in this conversation, we also learn that Ramel's magic lends for the ability to master any language she hears, no matter how briefly she hears it for, and that Benson is able to go invisible. So obviously, both of those traits are great tools for spying, which Selena also concludes. But the question for me is, what information is Maeve trying to gather? I know that they are passing through, and in the process, obviously, they're trying to collect some information about Selena, but I want to know where they had been previously and what info they had been looking for while they were outside Doranelle.
Absolutely. I do wonder if that's going to come up later. And if we meet these characters again, or another interaction with Maeve, or there'll be some kind of little connection. I wish I had more to offer, but I really don't know. But also, I will just say, as much as I hate Ramel, that is a cool ass power. That is a really neat manifestation of magic. I would love that. Think how cool that would be to go anywhere in the world and be able to pick up on the language like immediately. Super cool.
Very handy.
Especially for spying. Like, that is the ultimate spy weapon.
Also, it's kind of creepy that Benson, from this little bit of detail that we get about him, the fact that he's kind of a creepy fae guy and he can go invisible, I'm like, that does not seem like a great combination.
No, I know. When I read that, I was like, he's being creepy with that.
I don't want to think about it.
Same.
To continue, SR speculates she must be gifted if Rowan was training her and concedes that Rowan isn't an easy teacher like the rest of those that serve Maeve. That is a little bit of foreshadowing for what SR ultimately concludes about Selena by the end of this scene. SR also reveals that she had been involved romantically with Lorcan, who was also not, quote unquote, easy to be around. With more of Selena's questioning, we learn that Rowan and Lorcan have a very tumultuous dynamic, to say the least. But despite this, they were both too powerful for Maeve to let go, thus why she implemented a blood oath with both of them. SR also reveals that she is not Maeve's biggest fan, and when Selena asks why she was telling her so much, SR says, because you're training with the most dangerous, pure-blooded Fae male in the world, and yet he treats you like an equal. He presented you as his equal, which is very perceptive of SR, and I really like that. But as discussed in our regular Heir of Fire episodes, Rowan's equality to Selena is part of why I like them together. I love that he respects how powerful she is, and that in general, they are a really good pair. And as we've discussed before, they have complementary powers. And so where the other's power, I don't want to say
Ends, the
lacks, but
other
where
begins.
they do. Yes, exactly. And I do wonder if this equality of power is part of why they are Karanom. Like, I wonder if to
Oh.
Karanom, there has to be some similarity in overall strength of magic.
That's an interesting thought. That seems very likely to me. I mean, without knowing more from the series so far, that would not surprise me to learn that.
Yeah, it would make sense just because there's the whole magic, needs to be balanced or whatever, and etc.
Yeah.
Now, the last part of this conversation that is very interesting to me is when Esther says Rowan's not one to show off a new companion just to spite an old lover. I find it all very interesting because obviously, does this mean Rowan must have some more romantic feelings for Selena?
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, I hope it seems so. I think that's the pretty obvious speculation from this scene.
yeah, if I were to step back and look at Heir of Fire separately from this, to me, the feelings feel like they're developing, but neither of them have really realized it yet.
Mm-hmm.
In this timeline of Heir of Fire, we know that Selena thinks there was nothing romantic about sharing a bed with Rowan, which would indicate that they hadn't, consciously moved to a I have more feelings stage yet.
Right.
But she also, by the end, feels very comforted by Rowan's presence. And as we
Oh,
said
yeah.
before, they never started sleeping in separate beds. So,
Not even once.
so that scene ends. And by this point, dinner is ready. They all are seated at the dining hall to eat. Selena ends up sitting next to Benson, thanks to Ramel being a busy. And Ramel attempts to make a dig at Selena by calling her accent boorish, but Esther defends Selena, which I really appreciated.
I have to say, Ramel sucks, okay? We all agree on that. She's not pleasant or fun. But her insults are equally annoying and entertaining. She's just kind of clever and uppity, especially when she tells SR, "You had such a provincial upbringing, SR." It's so, popular, mean girl, rich daddy coded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of like when the rich lady comes to the middle class house in the movie and she's like, "And your home is so cozy." And they're like, "Where's the rest of the house?" And you're like, "This is it, man." That's the vibes Ramel gives.
Yes, totally. And of course, I love that Selena gets Ramel back after she says this by boiling her soup so she burns her mouth.
That is so petty. Okay. She got a PhD in petty.
But that's why we love her. Her and her easily agitated, quick to strike attitude. So
quick to burn.
The conversation continues to a discussion of husbands and mates when Ramel comments on Esther's inability to, quote, find a proper husband. Selena asks about mates, and we learn from Ramel a mate is rare. Most fae don't find them, so we marry. And then Benson also adds a male will feel the need to kill any challenger to his mate, even if that challenger is already wed to her, even if they're in love. For all our refinement, there are still instincts that can't be controlled. Internal squeak. So this does give us some information we have been waiting for. Though, again, this is a scene that is not included. And so we will just have to wait for further confirmation about mates within the actual books.
Totally fair. And I'm the first one to be like, pump the brakes. But I do feel that this information will be consistent in the series because I'm sure mates will come up again in some conversation with somebody. And it feels that will be consistent across the board.
So I agree that feels like an important piece of info about Faye as a whole. So Ramel makes a nasty comment about Selena likely never finding a mate due to her diluted blood. And this makes Rowan snarl softly beside her. And we love a protective Rowan, or I do at least. Probably not Addison, but I love it.
I do enjoy that. I just don't enjoy Rowan as much as you yet.
Ramel continues being annoying and rotten and goes on to then insult the food, which Ain't nobody gonna talk shit on Emerys's cooking, okay? Absolutely not. And I love that Selena goes on to engulf her ass in flames in response to Ramel putting her hand on Rowan as well. And then Ramel had also had the audacity to try and dismiss her and threaten to whip her.
Yeah, that's pretty extreme. I'm like, oh, so that's how you view people that you think are beneath you? Like, ooh, okay.
Ugh, but it was very satisfying when Selena just puts her in her place with her flame. I was like, hell yeah. Selena goes on to threaten to burn Ramel to ashes if she touches Rowan again, and then melt Benson's bones if he looks at a female in Mistward again, which I thought was really funny. I was like, damn, Selena, she is also very territorial over Rowan, and I love that.
Yeah, she's very fuck around and find out. That is the energy she's giving.
After dinner, Selena and Rowan converse in his room. And we do get some more information on Rowan's past as he explains how he and Lorcan had to wipe out the city of Solomir.
Yeah, Solomir. I think without hearing it in the audiobook, I think either pass the test.
All right. And Rowan describes it as a place so wicked, full of monstrous people who did such unspeakable things that even Maeve was disgusted by them. There are some acts that are unforgivable. She swore to them if they continued to do so, she would obliterate them. I will say, for as much as we comment on how we think Maeve is a baddie bad, it does seem like she has some boundaries and morals.
I think so too. If you'll remember, Rowan also tells us in Heir of Fire that she banned the enslavement of people you share a Karanom bond with too. I think that's fair to say that she does have some boundaries. I also wonder if Solomir is going to come up again or be relevant at all. I don't know why, but I just have this impression that maybe the city was significant at the time. Maybe it was housing some great evil or something, or maybe just in a passing conversation. But I feel like we'll hear about that city again, or the lack of the city, I guess, since it's now gone.
Maybe if we get more info about Lorcan in Queen of Shadows or something moving forward.
Yes.
To kind of further explain the relationship that they have with each other.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll come up in combos. Something else I found really cute was when Rowan threads his fingers through hers and teases her to say, but I'll never forget the look on Ramel's face when you shot fire out of her mouth and eyes. Despite the lighthearted nature, the conversation becomes serious as Selena tells him in their mind-to-mind speak the following. She says, it scared me that I've come to care so much about you that I draw that sort of line in the sand. It scared me that I would burn and maim and kill for you. And yet, at the end of the day, you still belong to Maeve, and there is nothing I can do to keep you with me.
Yeah. I think she may have kept that line or something very similar in Heir of Fire because that sounded really familiar to me. Or it's like a thought that she has. I feel like that specific part of the text may have actually made it into Heir of Fire as I think about it.
Maybe at the end.
Yeah.
I feel like it was similar to some end thoughts she has as she's leaving. To go back to Wendelin about how she would miss having Rowan there and all that stuff. But it does make the blood oath Rowan makes to her at the end of Heir of Fire even more important. I feel like the symbolism of that is really wild because Rowan chooses to make that bond for Selena, knowing how much she cares for him. The next morning, the Fae party departs. And I like that Rowan disapproved of the way Lorcan treated Esser, noting she had been good for him, but Lorcan's ruthlessness and cold ambition were his best tools and his worst enemies. He had only seen the female for what she offered inside his bedroom.
That makes me dislike Lorcan just a little bit. I'm like, oh,
no,
okay.
Not great. Not a good look, Lorcan. But aside from that, Rowan clearly notes that Aelin had made a claim on him and worries about Esser telling Maeve about it since Esser had also figured out that she was actually the Queen of Terrasen. Esser ultimately agrees to keep it a secret for no price, instead stating that, through all the centuries, I've never seen you present another female as your equal, as your friend. And I do not think you did it because of who she is. I would not take that gift away from you, Rowan, because it is a gift. She is a gift. To the world and to you. You deserve to have someone who will burn the earth to ash for you.
Oh, yeah. See, it's hard not to like SR.
I've been really trying hard not to focus on the romantic implications of Esser's comments. because again, this is a bonus scene that didn't make it in the book. But if nothing else, Esther recognizes that Maeve doesn't really care about Rowan in the same way Selena would if he were under her command instead. I think Rowan recognizes that too. And I think it's a big part of why he does make the blood oath to Selena immediately after being freed from Maeve, or at least part of it. He also, of course, worries for her safety. So
I can't believe I'm going to say this again. This just screams mates to me. It just screams it, especially the I would not take that gift away from you, Rowan, because this is a gift. That is some real heavily coded language. And I wonder, in a lot of fantasy series, specifically other SJM series, it's common that when characters are mated, there's a change in their scent, a marker of sorts that other fae can pick up on. There are also other behavioral signs like being ultra protective, etc. And I wonder if SR is sensing those things between Rowan and Selena. And that's why she says that. I'm just saying, I know. Listen, even if it makes me roll my eyes, I'm nothing if not honest and true to the text, okay?
This is true. We still need to get over the Rowan had a previous mate situation, though.
Yeah, you ain't gonna convince me otherwise. That is a biggest thing holding me back. Yeah, especially because in this, if you're taking the text from this, mates are extremely rare. Okay, and he found 2 mates. Get out of here. The statistical odds of that, no. I mean, Lorcan is 1,000 years old. He hasn't met his mate. 1,000 years old. Imagine being 1,000 years old and never finding your soulmate. 1,000, like, girl. Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. Unless Lyria, I don't know, wasn't his mate somehow. Who knows?
I don't think you get that confused. Okay, don't get me started on this. Keep it moving.
Okay. All right. We're almost done. So after this, the party leaves, and Rowan just can't stop thinking about Esther's words. And more importantly, it says he wanted it to be true.
Oh, of course he did.
And then now we get to, I think, the funniest part of this entire deleted scene. Selena comes into his room with a homemade chocolate hazelnut cake one day and calls in her favor to make him eat it. And I really commend Rowan because he fakes eating that cake like a champ. Okay. He knows it was going to make her so happy. So he shovels all of it down except for like a little sliver, which is also really funny to me because he knew she couldn't resist eating it. And so he's like, all right, I'm going to give her a taste of her own concoction here and see what she thinks about it. But then he leaves the room and Selena, of course, tries it herself and ends up gagging on her own cake, basically.
I like when he says he can hear her cursing. She's like, I won't say those bad words, but I can totally hear her saying some really vulgar words.
Maybe giving an obscene gesture here or there or something. To who? I don't know. I guess to the cake.
The cake.
But yeah, that whole scene was very funny. And that now ends the whole bonus scene. Now we just have our favorite moments and quotes left. Do you want to go first or should I go first?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything clever to say. I'll start it. So
okay.
At the beginning, Selena asks Rowan what his favorite food is, and his response is, whatever keeps me alive at the moment. And I was laughing so hard when I read that because his response is just so Rowan-coded. It could not be any more bland and dry. Can you just imagine asking him what his favorite piece of music or art is? And I feel like he would just say something like, music and art are not useful for battle. Like
right,
he's just such a little robot. It's so funny. Whatever is keeping me alive at the moment. Like, oh my God.
Rowan doesn't seem like he believes in luxuries. Like he would totally be one of those off the grid people.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
Has his literal shelter and just, yeah, I don't know.
He's a real, you only need what you can carry with you and what keeps you alive.
Yes.
Which is even funnier when you think about Selena and how she is.
Yeah,
I think back to that quote in Tab where her and Sam were talking about moving and she's like, and she would have to find a new confectionery and a new dance class and a new clother and a new perfumer. And it's like, girl, and then meanwhile,
and
Rowan's
Lavender's
like,
soap
and Lavender's
books.
And Rowan's like, whatever will keep me alive. Difference is like, oh my God, that's really funny.
Night and day. Yeah. My first quote that I really liked was when they make their little crowns for each other, respectively, with their powers. And he says, I trust you. Quietly enough that she looked at his face. And now, one for you. And then it's noted that a delighted chill went down her spine as a crown of ice formed in the space between them. I just thought it was cute.
Yeah, it was cute. It seems like a very fun, relaxing thing to do. If I had firepower and I could just kind of play with it, it's like the equivalent of playing with someone's hair,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very just affectionate, I think. So
overall, I actually really liked SR's character as a whole. I can't really explain it, but I just get a good feeling about her. And I do hope we see her again, but I just really liked her.
Yes, and I liked her quote that she tells Rowan when she says, and you deserve it. After all this time, you deserve to have someone who will burn the earth to ash for you. After that, it says Rowan couldn't stop thinking about what Esther had said because he knew it was true, because he wanted it to be true.
Oh, that is nice. Oh, I also, of course, I think everyone's favorite part of this is how Rowan eats the cake and it makes Selena so happy, even though it's absolutely disgusting. I think that was really sweet. Yeah. But honestly, what I thought was the funniest thing from that scene is when she's bringing the cake to Rowan and she says Emrys looked at it like he was going to faint with horror. Because Emrys takes like such pride in his work. And I just imagine her in the kitchen and she's just making a mess and just burning things, and Emrys wants to help so bad and he's just like cringing, and then he sees it and he's just like, what is that? And I don't know why, but the way that plays out in my mind is really funny.
You can just see it all going down, and like Luca's probably like scurrying out of there. He did not want that snack.
No, he did not.
Okay, and then my second to last one that I really liked is the quote I read earlier when Selena confides in Rowan that it scared me that I've come to care so much about you that I draw that sort of line in the sand. It scared me that I would burn and maim and kill for you. And yet, at the end of the day, you still belong to me, and there is nothing I can do to keep you with me. Luckily, there was something they could do.
I remember we thought that was going to be such a big deal. And then it was like,
God, it was like that thing. Here you go. Here's a ring. I'll trade you my ring for your warrior.
And like be gone with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, my last one is when Rowan thinks he knew every fleck of those remarkable eyes, knew how her very blood tasted.
It's giving vampire.
It is giving vampire. All right. That officially concludes our podcast. So thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Book Talk Fantasy podcast. As always, we are so glad that you found us. So please leave us a review, subscribe to the podcast, and check out our social media pages to keep up with us on a daily basis. That's all we've got for you guys today. So stay nerdy, and we'll catch you all next week for our very first episode of Queen of Shadows. Bye.
Bye. And stay tuned for some bloopers. If you've listened to our Onyx Storm, if you've listened to our TOG coverage,
I really liked the. I can't speak right now. I'm tired, and I'm hungry, honestly. So.
Same. I feel like I look like death right now. Like I'm looking at the camera. I'm like, ooh, even the camera isn't covering it up,
I said that wrong. Yes, and I liked the quote that
we're almost there. Just hang on.
Okay.